The one missing detail from all those other videos talking about interview presentations. It's to make it a facilitation, not a presentation. And this is one of many concepts that we're going to cover in today's longer video. My name is Jeff H. Sipe. I am the founder and coach at practiceinterviews.com. And so many of our clients have been coming to us to help with these presentations. And we want to uncover in this video all the secrets we've been sharing with them. Now, the setup is going to be an assumed, hey, you've been given a lot of concepts and you're building a presentation before the interview, but we can also apply a lot of these tips and tricks to case study interviews where we're getting the information on the day of the interview. So item one, there are just so many concepts to consider in item one, but the number one area to focus in on is how are you getting these details from your POC, whether that's a recruiter, hiring manager, whoever your point of contact is. We got to be really proactive with them. And the number one question you want to ask from an information standpoint is, what does success look like in this presentation? Then some other very, very critical items to focus in on. I'm going to slow down a little bit just so we can catch all these items. Who is the audience? This is absolutely critical. Are they technical? Are they non-technical? Are they at the peer level? Are they at the executive level? And then, are they playing themselves? Are they playing a pretend audience like they're a client, they're a vendor, they're an executive at said company, for example? Then, who are you? Are you supposed to be playing the person who would be in this role? Are you supposed to be playing yourself? And what is the history of the relationship? Are you meeting them for the first time? All these will be foundationally important items to understand your audience and understand yourself. Secondly, how much time will you have to present? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. These are kind of the classic times. Then what is the setup? Is it a presentation and then Q&A is covered at the end? Are there specific tools that you'll be able to utilize, such as PowerPoint? You could be utilizing Google Slides, or maybe it's a homegrown tool that they want you to use. Is there a suggested number of slides? Is there a minimum? Is there a maximum number of slides? I understand that a lot of this data should be given up front, but your ability to be proactive and take advantage of being proactive is going to be critical. Now, lastly, research. I just want you to get a little bit of background in terms of researching the organization, their mission, their values. How do they work? Because that's going to give you a little bit of context for your presentation. And then secondarily, absolutely, if it's related to any technologies, we do a lot of presentations for Google Cloud, for example. Know those technologies backwards and forwards as much as you can with the time you're given. Item two is advice. So I want you to get as much advice as you can from people in the arena, including, and the first step could be actually just getting advice from your interviewer. So for example, let's say we have a great interview with Sue and we built fantastic rapport. At the end, we might say, hey, Sue, I'm just looking for a little bit of advice. I have the presentation coming up next week. And is there anything that you can highlight for me that might be valuable for me to have success? Now, of course, this is only if you've built a great rapport with Sue or any other interviewer. Secondly, you're going to seek out the people at the organization. Who do you know at the organization? Can they tap into their colleagues to find out a little bit more about what success looks like in this presentation? And then lastly, you'd be surprised on LinkedIn. If you network with people on LinkedIn about a subject area like this, they're often more willing to help than on other items because they want to set you up for success. It surprisingly works for this part of the process. So I would say you can at least try, and remember, they can share high-level feedback without providing any confidential information. Item three, it all matters. And so this is one of the items that I just didn't really see covered. And any of the information that is shared with you, it may seem like it's all obvious, but some simplistic data is going to be given to you, and I want you to explore everything. So let's give you a scenario. Essentially, let's say one of the data points is simply that Bob's been with the company for 5 years. This might seem like a very simple data point that's not that important, but if we find out that Bob's been with the company for 5 years, why it might be critical is maybe you're talking about a technology that's been around for exactly 5 years. So what that means is that Bob has been there since the inception. He's been there from beginning to its current state, and that could just be a valuable piece of information to help you have success. Whatever the data that's provided, not all of it will actually be relevant, but it's important that you explore all those items. Sometimes they're looking for the little details to see how you do with those items. Absolutely critical. And I'm going to say critical a lot because there's so many critical items to consider. Item 4, content. Let's go high level. All right, we're finally getting into the weeds of the content. And remember, the structure should be shared by your point of contact. You should be asking about the structure, but we always start with that introduction. And then included in the introduction, you're going to briefly talk about what you're going to focus in on. You're going to set the tone there. And then lastly, you are going to show tremendous excitement and enthusiasm. Get them engaged, get smiled, show some good energy. Then in the middle, we're going to focus in on all sorts of items that are important, from starting off with the benefits and some recommendations, some items to consider, maybe some items to prioritize. We'll absolutely want to flip the coin, look at some risks, some constraints. We'll want to be thinking about resources from a people and tooling perspective. What does the execution look like, including maybe a testing strategy, a proof of concept, and then the end. The end is going to focus in on an action plan, and you're really going to sum up the information again. And then lastly, the close. If you are going in for a sales role and you're trying to pitch to a prospective client, you need to try and close the sale. This was advice given to us from a client that came after a presentation that they didn't do that. And so now we're always giving this advice. Remember, in the beginning and middle and end, always keep the audience connected to these core ideas, because this is going to be a major part of just reiterating, getting a little repetitive, but making sure that your point is really getting across. The last piece is, I just want you to anticipate any potential questions. You're never going to be ready for everything, but if you're starting to think about where are some of the areas they might probe, that's going to be a great exercise for you as well. Item 5, okay, let's get into the content slides. Again, we're going to start off with the assumption that we have the opportunity to pre-plan. But if you had to conduct this in person or via video, these tips will also apply. And the number one item to remember when it comes to content in your slides, less is more. If you put too much information on the slides, what happens is your audience starts reading the slides and they stop listening to you. So stick to that less text, and I want you to create more visuals. That could be data, graphs, charts. You really want to switch it up. And while stats are helpful, don't overdo it. Secondly, consistency. Consistency is just key. And so I want consistent font, spacing, and sizing, all when applicable. And of course, you're going to go back and you're going to spell check and look for any inconsistencies and have other people do this for you as well. Lastly, a kind of interesting approach that I tend to think about, and I actually saw this somewhere else, is if you're just struggling a little bit to find the structure that you're going to put for the content in the slides, think about the STAR method. It can just be a simplistic way to be thinking through the entire presentation. Item 6, body language, pitch, and tone. We've talked a lot about this. This is more important than your words. So body language starts off with a positive attitude. So again, when you introduce yourself, you are going to be smiling, engaged, and number one, you are going to be standing. Famous speakers, all the great speakers, they stand. When I do these videos, when I do my lives, I stand so that I have more inflection, more pitch, more tone when I speak. And this is going to be a really critical item. Secondly, smile. So if you're doing it via video or you're walking into the room, walk into the room with this. You have this huge smile on your face, because that's just going to warm them up to you, and winning them over in the first few seconds can be really critical. Third, eye contact. This is where it gets a little tricky, right? We're doing a lot of stuff via video now, but when we get back to doing it face to face, we might turn to look at our presentation. Just make sure that when you turn and you come back, that you are continuing to keep that great eye contact. Lastly, in terms of pitch and tone, slow down. It's not about the number of words we say. It's making sure that we are very clear and concise. Make sure that they hear what you're saying, and slowing down can be critical. Item 7, facilitation. So we mentioned this really early on. You are told to give a presentation. I mentally want you to switch it to facilitation. This is going to keep me as your interviewer engaged. We have to make it interactive. And especially if you're told to give a 30-minute presentation, you're going to lose your audience. They're going to go dark. They're going to stop listening. They're going to tune out at some point. So we want to fill it in with a little bit of questions and a little bit of space and engage with them. And even if they tell you at any point, hey, save all the Q&A for the end, stop asking questions, you might probe a little bit by saying, well, Bob, I just want to mention that this is a topic we could obviously dive more in detail now, but I can also table it and talk about it at the end. It's just important that we continue to engage, and then building in a little bit of space between the slides, between something important in case they want to jump in. Item 8, stay on track. I love this item. Some interviewers, they are going to intentionally try and throw you off. How? They're going to ask you random questions. They're going to try and drag you into the weeds of something insignificant. So if Bob does this, there's only a couple of actions you need to take. One, you can say, Bob, it's a great question. I'd love to table it to the end and we can get back to it, and I'll make sure I make a note of that. And then if Bob pushes, say, Bob, here's the high level answer on that. Let me get back to the more significant, more important details at the end. So you're at least acknowledging Bob, answering him, and you're doing it in a gracious and kind way. But just make sure that you are aware that you need to stay on point, and some interviewers will try to pull you off track. Item 9, practice. Yeah, no shocker here. Obviously, practicing your presentation is critical. And if you don't want to do it, it honestly will really hurt you in the process. My specific strategy is I want you to do it with at least 3 different people at a minimum. Someone technical, someone non-technical, someone who completely understands your space, somebody who doesn't understand your space at all. And really, again, turn it into a facilitation and ask them, how was my energy? How was the deck overall? Was the subject matter area understandable and clear? Practice is just so important and will really, really uptick your success in these presentation facilitations. Item 10, scheduling. So one of the items that's really missed in these other videos is how much time do you need? And I want you to have a couple weeks, ideally at least a couple weekends to work on it, because you're going to need to spend a lot of time putting the presentation together, tweaking it, then practicing it with people, and then tweaking it after each practice session. And so I see a lot of our clients get really stressed out because it comes up too quickly and they really just don't have the adequate amount of time to prepare. So give yourself as much time as possible. I know there's a ton of info and I definitely likely missed something or multiple items, but I hope it was pretty comprehensive. I get pretty excited about this subject because I know just a few small tweaks can help you have massive success. I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.